Hi, I'm Dr. Gwen. I'm a clinical psychologist who's been empowering disabled individuals, their families, and their support systems for over 20 years. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel, where I curate tools, share mindsets, and promote habits to help the neurodiverse community thrive. Also, hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a thing. In this episode, I talked to Dr. Nicole Pickering, a clinical psychologist in Los Angeles who specializes in the treatment of anxiety-based disorders using cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. Nicole helps us understand what CBT is, who it's good for, and who it's not good for. She also shares how she modifies application for neurodiverse populations and how triaging treatment can lead to quick and effective results. I always learn something whenever I collaborate with Nicole. I hope you will as well. Enjoy. Hi, Nicole. Welcome to the channel.
Hi, Gwen. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And you and I have a long-standing professional relationship. Then we've gone back and forth. And so I'm so excited that you're willing to come on and talk about cognitive behavioral therapy. But before we do that, let's have you talk about who you are so the audience knows who you are.
Thank you. So I am a clinical psychologist in the LA area, and I specialize in working with children and adolescents, and my specialty is anxiety disorders. And I do see adults from time to time, as long as it falls within my category of specialty. But my specialty area is using cognitive behavioral therapy, especially around anxiety disorders, and helping people to overcome the difficulties that they're facing, the fears and the intrusive thoughts, and the difficulties with their everyday life and how their anxiety inhibits them. And it's so wonderful to see people who come into my office and having so many different things that they can't do or ways that their functioning is impaired, and then walking out of my office at the end of treatment with being able to conquer the world. And it's just the most amazing thing.
Yeah, and you're really good at it. I know
you.
whenever I have a question about CBT or the treatment or something's not working for me, I know I can always reach out to you. So why don't we just get into what cognitive behavioral therapy, or you and I have referred to it already as CBT, but what is it? For someone who doesn't know what CBT is, what is it?
Definitely. And I think I get that question all the time, where it's like, what is CBT? How does it work? And it, just those three little letters can be so impactful. So cognitive behavioral therapy is first and foremost an evidence-based approach. And what we mean by that is has been researched in science. We know that there are a lot of studies that show that this is an effective treatment for lots of different things. So I specialize in anxiety disorders, but CBT can also be helpful for somebody who has like depression or has maybe some mood disorder or difficulty with emotion regulation. There's a lot of different categories of areas that CBT can be really helpful with. But the nuts and bolts of CBT is we look at thoughts, feelings, and actions, and we see the connection between all three of those, and we work towards helping somebody in all three of those domains find relief in their symptoms. So it's a short-term approach. It's problem-focused. We look at strategies and tools to give somebody, and it's a goals-based approach. And at the end of the day, what we really want is we want to be able to change the way you think about something, or help somebody change the relationship they have with something in their mind, the way they think about it, and then and help them to be able to interact with the world around them in a different way. So
yeah. Great. Mm-hmm. Keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah. So for example, we know that like someone's maybe depression or someone's negative thinking can really impact the way that they engage with the world around them. So for example, if somebody is, let's say they're at school and they're passing someone in the hallway. I know it's COVID right now. We're not going to have that happen as much, but for the times that aren't COVID, we're walking down the hallway, we see somebody, and in our depressed mind, they don't say hi to us. And our first thought is, I'm a loser. They hate me. Clearly they don't like me anymore. And when in reality, that person could just be having a really stressful day. That person could just be in their mind about something. They just broke up with their girlfriend last night. And so they're kind of sad, and they're in their own mind. And so the person who has this negative thought internalizes a belief, and it maybe reinforces in their minds what they think about themselves, and then it makes them maybe shy away from others. They're like, okay, well, I'm not going to say hi to someone the next time I see them. And so what CBT will do is help to look at those thoughts and recognize, like, A, is it an accurate thought, or B, is it maybe just an automatic thought that's part of negative thinking? And then we challenge those thinking patterns so that they don't get stuck in the same ruts of having those negative thinking patterns. And then we also target the behaviors, right? So we don't want someone to shy away from saying hi to people, especially, like, that's part of normal, healthy social communication. So we would work on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always so interesting to me how powerful the mind is, how powerful our narratives are, that it happens so
Yeah.
quickly,
So fast. Yeah.
so fast. And
Yeah.
so to be able to be aware of our thinking, to be able to be aware of our feelings, and this idea that thoughts, feelings, and actions, as you said, are all connected and are really in this kind of, it's like a biological system. It has its own behavior of the way of all three of those things are working together.
Absolutely.
So
And when they're not working together, they're a monster, like, in
yeah,
someone's mind,
yeah.
like, it just takes over and it's awful.
Awful, awful. And that's when, you and I have gotten it before into, like, the idea of intrusive thinking, when there's this
Mhm.
negative thinking that is going on that's just unstoppable. You can't stop it,
Mhm.
and you got to do a lot to redirect your mind, shape your mind in a different way, use mindfulness, you talk about, and, all using all of those strategies. Nicole, you said that you are a specialist, and you are in anxiety-based disorders.
Mhm.
So, for the audience, what are anxiety-based disorders? I think people kind of get what anxiety is,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
there's other disorders underneath that umbrella. So maybe you can also
Definitely.
enlighten us about that.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's exactly what I say. It's like, our anxiety is like the umbrella, and if you think about what's underneath it, there's a bunch of different specific things that can be targeted in CBT for anxiety disorder. So that includes, so we all know about generalized anxiety disorder. When someone just says, "I have anxiety," that's just very much more specific or much more generalized to the whole environment. But there are other things that are related to anxiety disorders, are OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, phobias, panic attack, um, agoraphobia. There's also trauma or PTSD, which is considered an anxiety disorder. And the ones that are more unique, or the ones that are less heard of, are called body focused repetitive behaviors, or something like trichotillomania or skin picking. And those are hair pulling, someone who might be hair pulling because of just lots of different reasons, but they get into hair pulling and maybe have bald spots on their hair or different parts of their body. And then extreme skin picking, where they have a lot of wounds that they are picking at, or scabs that they like to pick at. And then finally, tic disorders are also under that umbrella. And so those are the different areas of treatment that I provide.
Yeah. Yes. And that, like, this lens, that anxiety in general, kind
Mhm.
of living in fear and feeling scared or out of control, and a lot of that can be driven. I think sometimes what happens with some of my clients is it doesn't necessarily even take an environmental or external
Mhm.
trigger, that you can dysregulate yourself by your own thoughts
Oh
that
my gosh.
are
Yes.
private. No one
Yeah.
knows that you're suffering privately, so
Yeah.
how important is this work?
Well,
um
especially with
yeah.
those intrusive thoughts that we talked about, right? So, intrusive thoughts can be any kind of thought that you have in your mind that's repetitive, that you really can't, you feel like you have no control over, and that your mind just circles in these thoughts. And that can be so scary for somebody, because sometimes intrusive thoughts really take on a mind of their own. Like, they very much related to taboo things that happen, or taboo things that they think, or maybe that goes against their family values or their own value system. And so then it becomes even worse, because then they think they're a horrible person because they're having these thoughts. And it can really be, it can really tear somebody down. And my hope is that people realize that these intrusive thoughts don't have to last forever either, and that these are things that are very treatable, and they're not at all the person that those intrusive thoughts don't represent that person by any means.
Yeah. 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 That is a very hard place to be in. And I think that there is something really kind of perverse about intrusive thoughts sometimes, whether
Mhm.
it's their intensity or their content. And then this person then has this self-judgment and
Yeah.
self-criticism about their morality or their value
Mhm.
or worth as a person. I mean, and it's all happening by themselves in this
Yeah.
internal system.
Yeah.
And so what I love hearing is that there's hope, right?
Yes.
These are CBT is an evidence-based treatment for these disorders, and so there is hope there. Not saying it's magical, and not saying that there's not work to be done, but that there is hope, because we need to build new behaviors and we need to build new systems to support a healthier way of thinking. Um, so, Nicole, as you know, my specialty is disability, specifically working with neurodiverse populations, people with autism. And, a lot of times, CBT is something that a lot of professionals, doctors, psychiatrists will recommend as a treatment of choice, as part of, the suite of treatments that someone might receive. In your opinion, how is CBT most effectively used with the neurodiverse population?
So CBT in a neurodiverse population can be really effective. It has really There's some great studies that show that it has been proven to be effective, and it is really great because it's a very focused strategy driven approach. So there are specific tools. It's concrete. You can have the 5 steps of what to do in a situation right in front of you. And sometimes in a neurodiverse population, there's some challenges in knowing what to do in that moment, and there's
Mhm.
some like what we like, and something something comes at them, and they're like, wait, what, how do I handle the situation? And being able to go back to their skills and know, okay, like in this situation I can do this and that. I can and learning how to implement those skills in their everyday life is so rewarding and so beneficial, because those become ingrained as patterns for them eventually. So as for and for anybody really, but because specific tools and skills are really because its skills are very specific, it can be really helpful for someone within the neurodiverse population, because it has a very concrete next step for them. They know exactly what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love the focus of CBT on skill building and behavior change, because in the work that I do, I don't see confidence being built in any other way, or efficacy for that matter, like how effective I feel at managing myself, at knowing myself, at doing what I need for myself. I really feel like it's like based in the truth, and that truth is in skills. And how do I use my skills, and how many skills do I have?
Hmm.
So I know like CBT is all about skills. It's all about
Hmm.
practice. It's all about, your awareness and knowing when to use those skills. Do you feel that there are any special tweaks or creativity that needs to be used for CBT to be more applicable or more effective for this population?
Yes. I
Yeah.
do, and some of the modifications are very easy to do. Instead of just having a conversation with somebody, someone who's neurodiverse will benefit more from having things on paper. So, for example, when I'm checking in with them, or when we're talking about anxiety ratings, like we might I might normally say, okay, on a scale of 0 to 10, how does this make you feel? But I might tweak the rating scale for somebody who comes from a neurodiverse background, or I might have, and I will also have it on paper so that there's a visual cue. I do a lot of visual cues when there's neurodiversity, as well as using manipulatives and trying to maybe sometimes with little kids, sometimes I'll use like Legos, or use some sort of analogy related to their specific interest too, and trying to help them to make the situation or what we're trying to teach applicable. So we might use some of the metaphors related to their preferred interest or topics, and sometimes it's not even communicating. Sometimes it's asking the question and then having somebody type it out on their phone and respond and text me, or using some sort of other, or writing it out. I've had some really great success with really difficult questions and difficult topics related to feelings and emotions when somebody just gets that notebook and is able to just write it down. And sometimes we have 5 or 10 minutes of silence as the person is just thinking about what they want to write and formulating their thought, and that's totally fine. And those are some of the major changes and adaptations that I make in treatment.
Yeah, that's great. So, really tweaking inputs and outputs, allowing the treatment, to come to them, to meet the client where they are. I just find that we just have to be really creative, because if we really seek to understand who the client is, we really do have to understand what their cognitive styles are, what their processing or sensory issues might be. And in order to be effective, we need to meet them where they are. So that's great. And I mean, I think that's great because CBT, again, is recommended a lot, especially to individuals who have autism, to even other types of neurodevelopmental kinds of disabilities. When do you see, though, Nicole, because like you and I both know that as psychologists, that usually there isn't just one treatment for everybody.
Right. It's not a one size fits all.
Yeah. When is CBT not maybe a good therapeutic choice? When would you say, oh, this is maybe not the treatment? You might try it, but you might say, okay, we really have to watch this because it may not be as effective as we would like.
Yeah, definitely. And there have been a lot of times where a parent is desperate for CBT for their child or teenager. And I'm like, okay, well, and I hear about their cognitive profile, and I think that maybe I'm not exactly sure if it will work for them or not. And so one of the things I like to really prep people on is we'll give it a try and see. The major thing that I need for it to work, because it isn't a one size fits all approach. Like it definitely is targeted to the person. And we do tailor the approach individually as well. But if somebody has like a challenge in having awareness of their process, of their thoughts and their feelings, and over time we'll try and build that awareness. But if that awareness is not being built for whatever reason, that's a really challenging situation in CBT, because so much of CBT relies on someone's own internal awareness of what they're feeling and what they're thinking, and how what they're thinking is connected to what they're feeling and what they're doing. And if all they can do is just get consumed in the thought and without being able to take a step back and understand that the thought maybe isn't, just because you think it doesn't make it true. If someone is just lacking in that ability, then we need to reconsider if CBT is the best approach. Certainly, sometimes we start with the behaviors, and we can kind of work our way backwards as well. But sometimes that can be a real challenge. And if that's the case, that's one reason why we might say that CBT isn't the right approach for someone who's on the spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. This kind of like what we would call observer. If you're having a difficult time being your own observer, then there's the potential for dysregulation in the treatment. If we're focused on the disturbing thought and we're pulling it to awareness, but then I can't then step back and observe it and know how to apply a skill to it, then we're stuck. in dysregulation. I see that actually quite a bit for some of my clients that are not necessarily a good fit for CBT, but are maybe better for more behavioral based therapies without so much evaluation of the thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
especially
It's so
because
important to be. Go
yeah,
ahead,
definitely,
Nicole.
especially because CBT is one of those things where it's not just behavior driven. There's so many thought driven components to the therapy, and like you said, like being able to step back and know what to do next. But sometimes someone who has ASD, especially with a hyper focus and hyper fixation, they might really just
Hmm.
stay in that looping thought and not be able to separate themselves out of that experience of those
Hmm.
thoughts, and that can be really challenging. And I don't want somebody to feel like they're failing or that they are not doing well in therapy. I mean, of all places in their environment, like I want therapy to be successful. So there are a lot of times where we have difficult conversations around what is the right treatment, because CBT may not be the most successful for somebody and they may not be able to benefit from it as they would other therapies.
Yeah, yeah. It's such an important piece, though, to be able to talk about. Um, is the treatment effective? Am I
Mhm.
being an effective therapist in the modality in which I'm competent in, and and I know. Um, and you're right. A lot of times for families and even adults that I work with, when the treatment or the therapy isn't effective, they definitely don't say, well, it was my therapist. They
Mhm.
usually say, well, there's something wrong with me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it's really about fit, and
Mhm.
understanding how I work, how I learn the best, how I function the best, and then making sure the treatment is right, but asking those questions.
Mhm. Mhm.
Nicole, when we talk about behaviors, because you've talked about skills several times, I wonder if you can talk about some of the skills that you might empower your clients with. One was just, I think you had talked about just kind of challenging thoughts. How is the thought right or accurate? Do you have proof for that or evidence that that's right?
Mhm.
What are some of the other, common skills that you might teach as part of, the treatment?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. One of the things I like to do when I'm working with somebody is to triage, like, what's the most prominent thing that they're having a hard time with. And so I like to break it down into three different areas. So is it stuff that's going on in their minds? Is it the feeling in their body, or is it their actions in life? Like, are they avoiding things, or are they having a hard time in certain situations? So we highlight which of those three are the most prominent. And if all three are, we work on all three and target all three. The major thing, one of the major stepping stones in this therapy that also is really effective is education. And I haven't really mentioned that yet, but
Mm.
education is a huge part of this therapy. I can't tell you how many people have come into my office with, like, having panic attacks or having intrusive thoughts or having really, really severe anxiety, and in their bodies and feeling it. And the first session, we talk about why it's happening, what's going on in the brain, how's their amygdala creating this response. And yes, I talk about the amygdala with a 5-year-old. We may not call it the amygdala, we call it Amy G Dala, because that's, we put AMY.G.DALA. That's the
Yeah.
amygdala, and we kind of create it into a little character. But once you get into the whys the anxiety is occurring in someone's life, it's a huge eye opener to actually cause relaxation. I have symptom reduction
Mm.
in patients all the time just after explaining to them why their body is reacting this way and what's happening in their brain and what's happening in their body. And it's an incredible tool. So that's one of the tools that I use, is education. And then when we go into skill building, we look at all three of those different areas. So thoughts, like I said earlier, we might challenge the thought, or there's other thought provoking or thought related skills and tools that I might give somebody, or teaching them how to shift their attention on something. So those are thought related. When we look at the body, there are people who have a really hard time relaxing, and they can just feel that tenseness in their body, or they have they it's all panic feelings and really flood of emotion into their body. And then those situations, we look a lot at a lot to more physiological tools and coping skills. So that's when you get the deep breathing and relaxation scripts of how to, relaxing your body, or having some sort of visualization of going into a place that feels calming, which, by the way, going back to your other question, that and visualization can sometimes be a challenge for people who have
Yeah.
ASD. So we do modify. That's another place where we will modify some of the approach, because maybe visualization won't be something that's very effective, and so every person's different, and we kind of test out what they can do. So we do look at the body and the body related sensations, and giving coping skills around that, and maybe teaching people how to relax. So a lot of people don't even know what they do to relax, and like yeah, maybe like Call of Duty might be something relaxing, but but being in the backyard, taking a walk with your dog, or with your dog can also be equally relaxing.
Yeah.
And then finally, we look at actions and behaviors. And so some of the skills around treating anxiety actually relates to fighting some of those avoidances that people have. Procrastination is a huge thing. Understanding and really pushing through that procrastination through the actions to avoid that procrastination, or to complete the goal. And then also, what are the feared events? And so if there are situations that are challenging, so we go through and we either plan a way to start tackling that big feared event, like if someone's maybe afraid of dogs, we would start with like looking at pictures, or finding a path to get past that fear of dogs, or whatever their feared event is, as well as helping somebody with a situation that maybe they encounter frequently that they have a hard time with, like maybe asking a parent for something that they saw that their favorite YouTuber is selling, their like a little stationery kit or something, where that might be hard because they assume that their parents are going to say no, and they don't want to ask parents for these things. And so it's kind of going through the scenarios of asking and making sure that you can be yourself and confident in those situations.
Yeah, that's lovely. And what a lovely way to organize and direct triage treatment. Mind, thoughts, body, actions. Like that's so awesome. See, I always learn. I always learn something. Whenever I talk to you, Nicole, I always learn something. Okay. So, Nicole, I always end my interviews this way.
Okay.
Which is, if you could only choose one skill to empower an individual with, what would it be and why?
That's such a great question. There's so many things. Like I'm so passionate about helping people. There's so many things I would say, but I think the number one most effective thing that I teach people are exposures. And exposures is when you face your fears and you do something that's challenging, or that and for some people, they've just never really been able to do. Their whole lives avoided certain things, or and you see that a lot with, like, in exposures is a lot of stuff. It oftentimes used in OCD work. So if somebody like has a hard time with hand washing and they have to hand wash for 2 minutes, like we would face the fear of not washing for 2 minutes and try and scale back to maybe a reasonable amount, like a 15-second hand wash, or washing dishes and having to scrub a plate for 4 minutes at a time and going to 10 seconds per plate. Or just in general, like being afraid of going into a crowd, or going, some people have never been to a Dodger game, but they love the Dodgers, but they can't go because they're afraid of going into an environment with a lot of people. And so, and certainly there are some considerations depending on someone's neurodivergence in how we approach those situations. But the thing that I really love the most is when somebody starts to face their fear slowly and taking little baby steps to get to that goal, and we set a goal together, and we find a way to make that path available to them. And so it's so powerful. And the things, the text messages I get from my patients, Coach Nicole, I did this and I am so proud of myself and I can't believe I did this. Thank you so much for helping me, or thank you for pushing me to do this. Like all the time, those are that's why I'm here. Like I wake up every morning to be able to get a message like that from one of my patients who have succeeded in achieving a goal or pushing through a fear and finding success in it. Like just, yeah, like I texted that girl that I was so afraid of texting and she wrote me back and she wants to hang out. Like it's so powerful. And I think even in my own life, like I just find little ways to find things that I've been fearing and avoiding, like maybe this interview.
Right. Right. Yes, of course. And now look, it's not so bad.
Not so bad. I'm on camera.
So
I'm here.
Right, right. Yeah, that exposure. And then, I think what's so helpful is that you're thinking about the exposure in a very thoughtful way. You're not like, oh, you're scared. You love the Dodgers. You need to go to a Dodgers game. So tomorrow you're just going to go. Like you've worked up to this event, with, helping to be aware of how you're feeling and employing coping skills to manage that neurological system that you've taught them about and how that neurological system's working, to get to that place where, oh, I'm building confidence because I can be exposed in these gradual ways and not be completely taken out at the knees.
Yeah.
It's so empowering. And I love
really
like even that
empowering.
educational piece, the whys, the mechanisms, like, oh, it's not just you not trying. It's not you just being lazy about something. There is a physiological system about how the nervous system is working when faced with a stressful thing where the brain really feels like it's, you're in a life-threatening situation.
Yeah. Yeah. No matter what the reality cues are on the externally, inside your brain it's convinced it's there.
Yeah, and it's like it kind of is binary in that way. I mean, either
Totally.
we're faced with like the fear of dying, like our
Yeah.
animalistic selves of
Yeah.
survival, or we're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And so even
Yeah.
events that aren't life-threatening, as small as, oh my gosh, if I don't wash this plate for 4 minutes, my family's going to die from something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it is, and it doesn't seem like a big deal by itself, but it is.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
is, because you've got a lot of plates to wash and now
Yeah.
you've been washing dishes for 2 hours.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's the distress. It's the distress that
Yeah.
comes up while you're doing that, because you and I both know that you can wash that plate for 4 minutes and you still won't be satisfied
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love
And
it.
walking away with those thoughts and those feelings, like, did I do enough? Did I do it the right way? Was it
Yeah,
good enough?
consuming.
It's so hard. Yeah.
All consuming. I mean, how do we live a life of like calm and peace? And you can't when you're worried about all those things.
No.
So what a
No.
this is like such a freeing modality. I mean, it's such a great treatment modality. So I'm so glad you were able to talk to us about it
It
today.
is. And it just really relaxes the whole person. Like I've had parents who say that their friends have texted their parents, their friends have texted them like, hey, what's going on with the kiddo? Like he's a different person, or she's changed so much. What's different? And it's amazing to hear those things can happen from the work that we're doing, and it's so powerful and life changing and short term. Like this is not like 3 or 4 years worth of work down the
Right.
line. Like this is
Right.
I mean, I started with a couple OCD cases right when the pandemic shutdowns started to happen, and they've already graduated. It's incredible. Like I'm so excited that it can be so the therapy can be so effective in such a short amount of time, which is why I love what I do and why I really am so passionate about CBT being effective. And it's not for everybody, like we said. Like it's really not. It's something, but for the people where it does work, it's amazing and it's so effective.
Absolutely. Well, Nicole, if people wanted to find out more about you or more about CBT and reach out to you, what's the best way for people to do that?
My website is cbttreatmentcenter.org. So you can look me up on the web there. And I know that my contact info will be in the description, but you can find me there.
Awesome. And I'll put that in the description below. So, Nicole, thank you so much for coming on and facing
Thank
your
you,
own fears
Gwen.
about coming on and doing an interview.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you're interested in finding out more about Nicole, her information is in the description below. I'll also share a link to my website where I share additional impressions and insights of this interview. If you got any value from this interview, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Doing so helps to get this information to others just like you. And if there's a topic or a program that you want to know more about, leave it in the comments below. See you in the next video, and thanks for watching.